Hey guys, today we're going to be checking out some stuff that's going to move around in the new patch, even though there weren't actually any proper changes to them. So stuff like how Rumble is now probably pretty much screwed, but there weren't any direct changes to him. I guess it could also be how Kayn got a buff in the patch notes as well. They changed the ultimate AD ratio to make it a little bit more, so he should be a bit better, but those are direct changes that are in the patch note. Most people probably missed it, most really didn't pay attention. I guess they think it's pretty trash, but actually, according to Lethality, he has over a 58% win rate on the best Kayns. These are the guys who have played him quite a lot at high elo, who kind of understand him a bit more. So actually, he should be pretty good. I think he's pretty good if you know how to play him, but there are a lot of bad Kayns right now. Anyway, that's not really the point of the video. We're looking for more hidden stuff. We might as well start with Sivir though, actually. So she's been in the dumpster for a long time now, but probably not this patch. Buff number one was a direct change to her Q damage. Actually, quite a lot. It's going to make a pretty big difference, but buff number two wasn't to her, but the tank meta we were in. You know how everybody has got a massive boner for Righteous Glory right now? How it lets Maokai and Cho'Gath and whatever get into fights and engage, and just a really good item. Sivir's ultimate is the same deal. It's team-wide. It's even free for the tanks to get. You don't have to buy or anything, or it makes them even faster. Basically, Sivir's ultimate in a carry meta is pretty crap. Nobody wants to die balls deep when you're playing like a Jace or something when you have no defense, but in the tank meta, that's exactly what a tank wants, to get into the middle of everything. Buff number three were defensive support. So we've got Janna, Soraka, a cheeky little bit of turret coming back, and that's what Sivir really wants. Somebody to keep her alive, right? Let her auto attack at the back of her fight and spread her little bouncing crits. And I always thought really that engage was best paired with her, like the tanks, but actually no. The highest win rate supports are always defensive ones, keeping her safe at the back. So that is why I think Sivir is probably going to be coming back now. A good direct buff plus two hidden buffs, but those three things are actually hidden nerfs to champions you wouldn't expect. Champions like Caitlyn, Ashe, Jinx, even a little bit Jhin as well actually. Sivir can outscale the other crit champions here and just push to win the lane. She outscales in a different way to most people though, because even though she's so good late game, it's why she also beats Jhin actually if she's clever. You actually don't even have to get in range. You bounce your W through the entire enemy team, through minions to hit and crit the enemy AD. They can't actually return any damage and you're killing them from the other end of the fight. It's really hard to play against. So Sivir then with a Caitlyn style build, kind of Shiv, Infinity Edge, Rapid Fire Cannon, will probably be sick this patch. I think it's pretty obvious now, but this patch is going to be definitely more tank meta with these changes, but there's also a hidden buff to defensive supports. We are talking like Janna, Soraka, Taric here, by the way. Like a lot of people have been asking me about our favorite fabulous support, and yes, like he is a lot better in this meta. Taric's ultimate is really good when you're trying to keep a tank alive for even longer, honestly. Like sure, it's very good for low health stuff as well, but like on a tank diving in, their AD is basically kept away from the fight for even longer than normal. It's also Janna and Soraka though, like keeping a Zed alive is really nice, but it's not easy. Instead, if you top up a tank, you shield a tank, they last longer and the enemy AD can't kill them. You win the fight that way. It's a very weird concept actually, not talked about very much, but keeping a tank alive is probably the easiest way to ever win a team fight. If your tank doesn't die, your DPS basically gets to free hit the entire time, but when he does die, their mid and AD carry moves onto your damage. That's a really quick, short, dumb kind of way of putting it, I guess, but it makes the point. Now this one is probably the biggest hidden change this patch actually, like Rumble top lane, maybe even Cassiopeia I guess a bit as well. The first change is Mundo's new E passive, where if he takes magic damage, his magic resist is increased by 2% and that can stack up to 30% at max rank. Change 2 is adaptive helm damage reduction from the same source was increased to 20% of a reduction. Both of these champions are going to be boned in slightly different ways. Rumble to start with is definitely the biggest one. Mundo was always very good against him anyway, kind of like a counter. The healing from his ultimate basically kind of negates Rumble's damage over time. Mundo is going to get his bonus magic resist passive so easily as well. Rumble's flame spitter technically deals damage every 0.25 seconds over the 3-second duration, so that is actually 12 ticks of individual damage. With just his Q flame spitter right on the Mundo, like he'd be getting 24% bonus magic resist, easily 30% when Deathfire Touch ticks as well. He could rush a Visage to increase the healing and now gains up to 30% more magic resist as well, but Adaptive Helm would make a really good rush. Reducing that damage by a further 20% after the magic resist increase, that would affect like Deathfire Touch. The damage over time is reduced by Adaptive Helm, but actually it's also magic damage, which means it's reduced by the increased magic resist. Same for Liandry's Torment, it works exactly the same way. Cassiopeia is a very similar story, so Deathfire Touch plus her Fangs plus her Poison, they're all reduced by Adaptive Helm. Her Q is going to be 3 separate ticks of damage, then Deathfire Touch on top of that every half a second. So about after like 2 to 3 seconds of fighting Cassiopeia, Mundo has 30% bonus magic resist already. It's kind of disgusting really when you think Mundo is likely going to get Visage and Adaptive Helm together, so that 30% is going to be a decent amount as well. It does actually get worse though, like as if that wouldn't be bad enough for players. Like Mundo can buy a Locket to completely negate Rumble's ultimate damage damage for his entire team. He'll build a Warmogs most likely anyway, maybe a Stone Plate to take the piss. Easily 2,000 health shield for his whole team, to be honest. And as well, his ultimate regen 60% of his total health pool. So like Mundo is the AP counter champion now, especially for sustained damage. If you ever pick Rumble or Cassiopeia into Mundo and he has a brain, like even a very small brain, you will never ever do any damage to him. So the next one, the Xerath buffs. Like, oh boy. So if you ban Zed and you hope they don't pick LeBlanc, you should be okay anyway matchup wise. With him getting a bit stronger though, we'll probably see him as a good kind of pocket counter to a lot of other mages. Like even though there is barely any mid changes this patch, this could be a hidden nerf to a lot of meta mid players. Orianna, Syndra, Corki, Lux, Cassiopeia, Victor. Like Xerath has a 53+% win rate against all of them spread over just the last patch alone. That's a good win rate. He basically outranges their damage. He threatens them in lane with a combo, and in teamfights he snipes them before they even get a rage. Just like with a Morello, Ludens, and Sword Boots, 3 items, your Q does about 450 damage, I think. If you hit 3 of those, Syndra cannot do anything in a fight. Probably even sniper with your ultimate and then turn it into a 4v5. I know he's not that popular, but if you face him, you are gonna be sad if you play meta mid stuff this patch. And I guess in a way, the buffs to Xerath will actually probably make a bigger splash than we think. The slow for starters, right? Like now if you hit the W, it makes hitting your Q, E, R easier as well. You'll be doing more damage from that change because you're not missing as much, even though damage wasn't actually changed at all in the patch notes. So coming back to the tank meta again, snooze fest meta, really, at least Riot though were kind enough to give us a proper counter as soon as the patch dropped, right, with Nasus. On Nasus E now, it shreds 35% armor rather than a base 30. So it's kind of like saying, okay, we're going to give your Sork Boots the same penetration as a Void Staff now. That seems fair, right? This is actually a massive deal, way bigger than people think. First off, it's for everybody. You have a good amount of base armor at later levels, even on an AD carry. With no arm pen, you'll be struggling to kill an AD who has about 40% damage reduction on physical damage from his armor, just his base armor. The problem is, for most AD carries who go triple crit right now, if they want any sort of defense, you either skip lifesteal or you skip arm pen, right? And most people need the lifesteal to survive, so they don't get a Last Whisper. That doesn't really matter anymore though, because Nasus E can give us the same penetration as a Last Whisper for free. For tank players playing against this is awful. If the AD builds Last Whisper and Nasus, you're 100% boned. Even with just Nasus, you're probably boned. You probably noticed, but once an AD gets Last Whisper, your armor doesn't really mean as much anymore. That is when you start to die. That's the first part, right? Like why tanks are kind of boned against Nasus now, but that is also a hidden buff to lock it. Shields and stuff are a really good answer to arm pen or magic pen and stuff. Like yes, your shield might fall a bit quicker, but you still got the massive shield to block damage for a bit. Also, Stone Plate becomes more important. You pop that when Nasus' E is down and you try to just outlast the debuff. It's not the best, but it's kind of an answer at least. To be honest, the real answer here would be to get champs that counter Nasus like Talon or Kled, Yorick, Yasuo. These guys will be getting a big hidden buff this patch when they're against Nasus. Like sure, he counters tanks very hard now, but he's proper bad against aggressive picks in lane. This change is only broken basically if you can survive the lane phase and if you're against a tank. Having your Q more is great late game, but that doesn't mean anything when you get pounded early. Finally, a bit about Duskblade actually. It was probably one of the most broken things I've ever experienced for a long time, except the Black Cleaver meta where it could stack a few years ago. Like that was legit the worst thing ever. I quit the game for like a week. So Duskblade now doesn't slow for range and it does less damage basically, like especially late game. The champions that will get hit the hardest from this are going to be Quinn and Jace, I think, then probably Draven and Jhin after that. That is a bit more obvious though, right? The hidden buff here is actually more to Talon and Quinn, Pantheon and Zed maybe as well. So yes, it sounds weird. Duskblade got nerfed, but that means people will buy Ghostblade first more, which is actually a really good item on roamers. It's a weird way of putting it, but people do not pay attention really to the game, right? They built Duskblade because they thought it was overpowered. Now they're going to build the real OP item without really realizing it. Let me just explain. Like Ghostblade was changed to give 40 out of combat move speed now, so that is almost the same as having tier 2 boost. That's also increased by 20% with the active, but the point is having an extra set of tier 2 boost actually makes you roam bloody fast. Whether you realize it or not, one, the game is easier when you roam. It's probably the easiest way to win from mid or the top lane. Like you go to other lanes, you snowball them, and it's pretty much game over. Number two, the move speed from that helps you roam quicker, better, be more likely to get a kill out of it, and also lose less farm when you're running back to your lane as well. So there are a lot of reasons why move speed is actually really strong. Even though the damage is slightly lower now on Duskblade, if you play around the move speed and roaming aspect, your overall win rate should actually increase. It's pretty weird, but it's definitely a hidden aspect. As we kind of said earlier as well, any lethality nerfs are buffs to tanks. Lethality sucks against a tank really bad. Lethality is a flat penetration, right? That means you take whatever armor they have and literally just minus a number on your arm pen. Early game on an AD carry, they might only have 50 armor, so taking 15 from your Duskblade is actually pretty legit. Later though, a 300 armor tank then goes down to 285 armor from your Dustblade. You see what I mean? It doesn't really do much. The more lethality gets bought by AD carries or mid laners, whatever, the more armor stacking tanks actually become stupidly overpowered and they just do not die. That's basically how it works. So that wraps up my hidden changes for this patch. Stuff you wouldn't have expected, but will be happening kind of below the radar, I guess. Thank you for watching, and for now, I'll leave you with the robots.